I never expected anything from my stepmother. Not warmth, not forgiveness, certainly not a gift. So when she slid a perfectly wrapped box across the table at our family dinner, I almost laughed. But then my 8-year-old daughter leaned in and whispered, "Don't open it. We should leave." Something about her voice's small but sure froze me mid-reach. I looked closer, and my stomach dropped. There was no ribbon, no card, no handwriting, just cold, mechanical wrapping and a faint chemical smell I couldn't place. I didn't open it. I didn't even touch it again. Instead, I made one quiet phone call. 30 minutes later, police were at the door. What was inside that box didn't just change the night. It changed everything I thought I knew about my family, and what they were willing to risk to protect a secret. I wasn't planning to go. Not really. When Helen called earlier that week and said she was hosting a quiet little dinner for the family, I almost let it go to voicemail. But something in her voice, this strained, saccharine softness, made me pause. She said there were a few things of your father's I'd like to pass along, in person. She always said in person like it meant intimacy, not control. I said yes. I don't know why. Maybe because Lily had never met Helen properly, not in a way that stuck, anyway. Maybe because I wanted to prove to myself that I could sit across the table from the woman who married my father 6 months before he was diagnosed and smile. The house looked the same ivy crawling up the stone pillars, same chimes at the door, like something from a funeral parlor. Helen greeted us with a smile too wide and arms too firm. She bent low to Lily's level, her voice an octave too high. My, look at you. You've grown so much." Lily nodded but didn't smile. She clung to my hand like something wasn't right. Dinner was uncomfortable in that overly polite way. Roast chicken, glasses that clinked too neatly. Helen's husband, her third, chimed in occasionally with awkward laughs. But mostly, it was Helen talking. About herself, about how she kept the house just the way Dad would have wanted, as if she knew. I was halfway through cutting Lily's chicken when she placed her fork down and looked at me with that particular seriousness only children can pull off. "She's going to give you something," Lily whispered. "Don't open it." I blinked. "What?" "She's about to give you a gift. Don't open it. We should leave." Before I could respond, Helen stood. She went to the sideboard, lifted a small box wrapped in gold paper. No bow, no card, just folded corners and neat tape seams. "I wanted to give this to you privately," she said, but her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. She placed it gently in front of me. "Your father would have wanted you to have it." Lily's fingers wrapped around my wrist under the table. My first instinct was to be polite, to thank her, smile, maybe pretend I'd open it later. But then I looked at the box. No writing, no crease marks from being stored somewhere sentimental. Just clinical, clean, new. There was something off about the weight of it, the way it landed, like a brick rather than a memento. I didn't touch it. Instead, I looked up at Helen, and for the first time that night, I smiled. "I think I'll wait," I said softly. "Some things deserve a little space." Her smile tightened. "It's perfectly safe." I nodded. "I'm sure it is." But under the table, Lily was trembling, and my gut was screaming that something was very, very wrong. The box sat untouched. Helen continued with her wine, pretending not to notice the silence stretching across the table like a slow fog. Lily had retreated into herself, picking at green beans and glancing at the box with wary eyes. Her small hand never left my arm. "I had it packed specially," Helen said, casually swirling her glass. "Just wanted you to have something from your father. Nothing dramatic." Her tone was off. It was the kind she used when she tried too hard to sound natural. I'd heard it before when she told me my father wouldn't want a long funeral, when she said the will was pretty straightforward. That voice always came before something was taken from me. I reached for my water, but my hand shook slightly. I masked it by adjusting my napkin. Lily leaned in again. "We really shouldn't stay," she whispered. "My daughter doesn't say things like that. She's not fearful by nature. Cautious, yes. But this wasn't anxiety. This was instinct." "I think we're going to head out soon," I said aloud, pushing my chair back a few inches. Helen's face twitched. "So soon? We've barely had dessert." "I'm not feeling great." That was true, though not in the way she thought. I looked again at the box. Still pristine, still glowing faintly under the chandelier light, like a trap with good lighting. Then I noticed something. The bottom edge had a faint scuff of tear in the gold wrapping that exposed a small barcode. A barcode. Who wraps sentimental heirlooms with retail packaging tape? I reached down under the table, pulled my phone from my bag, and snapped a picture of the label just visible at the fold. I zoomed in. A warehouse code. Not local. Not something you'd find at a department store. My breath slowed. This wasn't from a boutique. It wasn't from a keepsake trunk. It wasn't even a rewrapped family item. It was a shipment, something ordered, sent, like inventory, like evidence. My pulse pounded. I looked up and Helen was watching me now, not smiling, just watching. The silence thickened. "I'll take it with me," I said, keeping my voice light. "Thank you for the gesture." She hesitated, just a flicker, then nodded. "Of course, it's yours after all." But it wasn't a gift, and we both knew it. As I gathered Lily's jacket, I slipped the phone back into my coat pocket and clutched her close. We walked calmly to the car. Once the door closed and the world muted, I reached for the ignition, then stopped. Lily spoke first. She wanted you to open it so it wouldn't be her fault. I stared at her. "What do you mean?" She kept looking at you, like she was waiting for you to make the mistake. I believed her. And the scariest part? She was right. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove 3 blocks past our neighborhood and pulled into the parking lot of a small 24-hour diner. The kind with bad coffee and good privacy. I needed a place where I could think. Somewhere Lily could color on a kid's menu while I made a phone call I'd never imagined making. I stared at the box sitting in the back seat. Still sealed. Still humming with silence. I dialed the non-emergency police line. My voice didn't shake, but it felt like it belonged to someone else. "Hi. I received a package tonight at a family dinner. It came from someone I don't trust. I didn't open it, but I have reason to believe it might be part of something illegal." The dispatcher didn't question the pause in my voice. She asked for my name, location, and a brief description. Then she said an officer would meet me at my residence within the hour. I hung up and turned to Lily, who was drawing a squirrel with armor on the back of a placemat. "Mom?" she asked without looking up. "Are we in trouble?" "No, honey," I said softly. "We're being smart." She nodded like she already knew. 40 minutes later, I pulled into our driveway. 2 patrol cars were parked across the street. No lights, no sirens, just quiet presence. 2 officers stepped out. 1 male, 1 female. Both in calm, composed uniforms that said we're here to help unless we shouldn't be. "Miss Campbell?" the man asked. "Yes." "You reported a suspicious package?" I nodded and unlocked the car. The box was still in the back seat, untouched. "I didn't open it," I said. "It was given to me by my stepmother during dinner tonight. Something felt wrong." The female officer stepped forward. "Do you have any idea what might be inside?" "No," I said, "but I know what it reminds me of." She raised a brow. "Which is?" "My father passed away 3 years ago. Since then, there's been tension, financial tension, legal tension. My stepmother controls most of what he left behind. This box appeared tonight out of nowhere, wrapped like a gift. But it's not a gift. I'm sure of it." The male officer pulled gloves from his pocket. "Would you be comfortable with us opening it here?" I hesitated, then nodded. He took it gently, placed it on the hood of his cruiser, and began to cut the tape precisely, carefully, like he was performing surgery. When he lifted the top flap, I heard it. The soft rustle of bubble wrap. Inside were 3 items. A silver picture frame containing a photo of me as a teenager, something I hadn't seen in years. A thick envelope sealed in wax. A thin electronic device, flat, cold-looking. A drive? A tracker? The female officer reached for the envelope. Her gloves brushed the wax seal. "There's a barcode on the back," she murmured. "This wasn't wrapped at home. This was processed, like a shipment." My throat tightened. That's what I thought. Then she asked the first question that really landed. "Miss Campbell, has anyone used your name for business purposes without your permission?" I looked at the box. At the barcode. At the envelope with my initials in a handwriting that wasn't mine. And I knew exactly what I had to say next. I watched the officer slit open the wax-sealed envelope. The sound was surgical soft but final. She pulled out a stack of documents, flipped through them once, then paused, Her eyes narrowed just slightly, then she handed the top sheet to me. Is this your signature? I didn't even need to look. I already knew. Still, I took the paper with hands I tried to steady. My name was there, Avery M. Campbell, written in a loose cursive script I hadn't used since college. It looked enough like mine to fool a banker. But not me. No, I said, that's not mine. You're sure? I sign a school attendance sheet every week, I said. I know my signature like I know my daughter's voice. That's not mine. The officer nodded, then held up the next page. This one was worse. A notarized document. Authorization for transfer of ownership from joint account holder Avery M. Campbell to Helen P. Campbell. I blinked. What account is this tied to? She pointed to the corner. An estate account. My father's. One I hadn't known still existed. I stepped back. This is theft, I said quietly. She forged this. She made it look like I was involved. I didn't even know this account was active. The male officer looked up from his radio. We'll need to run some checks. The presence of a forged signature on a legal transfer document is serious. It gets worse, I said, almost laughing at how absurd the spiral was becoming. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the picture I took back at Helen's house, the barcode on the wrapping. I zoomed in. I looked up the code while we were waiting. It's tied to a packaging company based in Nevada, a fulfillment service that ships for luxury resellers. I handed him the phone. That's not where you wrap up old family heirlooms. That's where you process inventory that's about to disappear. The officer glanced at his partner, then quietly stepped aside to make a call. The woman stayed with me. Her voice softened. Can I ask, why would your stepmother forge your name on something like this? Why not just keep it hidden? I sighed. Because technically, I had rights to contest my father's estate. I never did. I let it go. I didn't want the fight. I didn't want to drag Lily through it. She nodded slowly. So, she assumed you'd stay quiet. Until she handed me the box, I whispered. And then the final piece clicked. She wanted me to open it, I said, more to myself than to her. She wanted my fingerprints on those documents, on that drive, on anything she could spin as mutual. The officer returned. We're going to need to take the box and its contents into evidence. You're not under investigation, but we may need a written statement. I nodded. Whatever you need. As they packed it away, I caught one last glimpse of that forged signature. A name I hadn't written, a life I hadn't lived, but a risk they were willing to assign to me anyway. I looked down at Lily, who had fallen asleep in the back seat, crayon still in her hand. They thought I wouldn't fight. They thought I'd open it. But they forgot one thing. This time, I wasn't alone. The next morning, my phone rang at 3 a.m. No caller ID. But I didn't need to see her name. I knew that tone before I even said hello. You didn't have to involve the police, Helen said. No greeting, no pretense. I walked quietly into the kitchen so Lily wouldn't hear. I stared out the window, watched the sun fight through gray clouds. You handed me forged documents in a shipping box, I replied. That's not a gift. That's a setup. There was silence. Then, you could have handled this privately. I tried, for 3 years. She exhaled sharply, like I was the unreasonable one. That account was just sitting there, untouched. You weren't doing anything with it. Because I didn't know it existed. Because you told me everything was closed. You weren't interested in legal matters, Avery. You never were. I wasn't interested in fighting you. That's not the same thing. Her voice dropped an octave. You've always been difficult. There it was. The real Helen. The one my father never wanted to see. You've always had that stubborn streak, she went on. You could have made this easier. You could have signed the documents when I first asked. You mean the ones you forged later? She didn't deny it. Instead, she changed tactics. If they trace the account activity, they'll tie it back to both of us. Do you understand? You're in this now, whether you like it or not. I blinked. My fingers tightened around the phone. You handed me that box hoping I'd open it, so you could say I was complicit, so I'd leave fingerprints on your crime. She snapped. I did what I had to do. To protect what? To keep things clean. To protect your father's legacy. To keep it in the family. I almost laughed. You think I'm going to help cover this up because you invoked family now? I think you need to be smart. I leaned on the counter, my voice calm. I already was. She paused. I recorded this call, I added. Just like I recorded you giving me that box. Just like the officers logged everything they touched. Another pause longer. I should have never trusted you, she hissed. No, I said softly. You should have never underestimated me. She hung up. Not a slam. Just that flat, cowardly silence of a line cut too late. I stood in my kitchen for a while, the coffee pot still half full. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't panicked. I was done being cornered by polite betrayal. I turned to see Lily standing at the hallway door, rubbing one eye. Was that her? She asked. I nodded. What did she want? I knelt down. She wanted me to stay quiet. And what did you say? I smiled. I said no. It came 2 days later. A voicemail from a detective calm, measured, with a voice like gravel wrapped in wool. Miss Campbell, we've reviewed the contents of the package and cross-referenced the documents. We need to speak with you about a signature file and several digital records. When you have a moment, please call back. I didn't wait. I dialed before the message even finished playing. He picked up on the second ring. Detective Rowan speaking. This is Avery Campbell. I got your message. There was a pause, then a soft shift in his tone like he was glad I responded, but also knew this wouldn't be easy. Thank you for calling. We've been reviewing the data pulled from the USB device found in the package. There are a few things we need to verify with you directly. Okay, I said. Go ahead. First, have you ever registered a business under the name Campbell Designs LLC? I froze. No. Have you ever created a business email account tied to that name? Or signed contracts with a distributor based out of Nevada? No, I repeated. I've never heard of any of that. He sighed soft but audible. There's a digital signature on file, matching your name. And there's a secondary signature authorization attached to your father's estate documents also with your name. The problem is, both are fake. But they were convincing. They've been used for over a year. I sat down slowly, heart sinking. Used how? To open 2 resale vendor accounts, to authorize shipment of collector's items sourced from overseas. Some of those items are currently under investigation as part of a larger art fraud case. Your stepmother's name appears nowhere on the primary documents, but yours does. Repeatedly. My hands went cold. Are you saying she built a fake business using my name? We believe so. We traced IP access to a residential modem previously registered to Helen P. Campbell. The digital signature on the business license doesn't match your tax forms, but it mimics your style from other public documents. It was well-crafted forgery, not amateur. I didn't speak for a moment. Then, so legally, I've been listed as part of a criminal operation for over a year, without knowing. Yes. And if I had opened that box, would that have made me complicit? He finished for me. It would have muddied things, yes. Possibly enough to delay clarity in court, possibly enough to protect her. There was a long pause on both ends. Then I said what I hadn't said out loud yet. She didn't just try to frame me. No, he agreed. She tried to burn the trail behind her and leave you holding the torch. My voice cracked slightly. I have a daughter. I know, he said gently, which is why I'm glad you didn't open that box. He asked if I would provide a notarized statement, as well as samples of my real signature. I agreed. I emailed everything within the hour. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking of how long this ran beneath the surface, and how close I had come to lighting the match for someone else's crime. They asked to meet at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Not at the house, not at my place. Neutral ground, which told me 2 things. 1, they didn't want to be recorded. 2, they were hoping I'd still listen. I showed up 10 minutes late. On purpose. Helen and Paul, her latest husband, who'd always played the background like an unpaid extra, were already seated. 2 untouched cups of coffee sat in front of them. I walked in slowly, ordered the most expensive pastry I could pronounce, and took the seat furthest from the window. Helen smiled like nothing had happened. Paul looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Thank you for coming, she said sweetly. I didn't answer. She tried again. We just thought it would be good to clear the air. You mean damage control? I replied. Helen's face twitched. Paul cleared his throat. Classic tag team. We didn't know she used your name, Helen began. You didn't ask, I shot back. She said it was just for shipping. She also said I'd open the box. They went quiet. I leaned in slightly. You knew. Maybe not every detail, but enough. You knew what she was doing and you let it happen because it benefited you. Paul opened his mouth. I cut him off. You both signed things. You co-signed rental units, storage accounts, supply payments. You knew my name was on the paperwork, and not one of you called me. Not once. Helen's voice cracked for the first time. We didn't think it would go this far. You didn't think you'd get caught, I corrected. She took a shaky breath. You've always been stronger, Avery. You don't have kids to raise. You have a job, a house, stability. We thought you could recover. I froze. That sentence. That justification. So polished. So rehearsed. As if they'd said it to each other in the dark, over and over, until it sounded like logic instead of betrayal. You offered me up, I said flatly, because my life was easier to sacrifice. That's not what we meant. It's exactly what you meant. They stared at me like I had betrayed them, like I had overreacted by refusing to absorb their consequences. I stood up, folded the napkin on the table, and finished the last bite of my overpriced pastry. I hope you both enjoy your community service, I said. Maybe you'll finally learn what real work feels like. Helen blinked fast. Paul looked down. I walked out without saying goodbye. I didn't owe them that. Outside, the wind cut through my coat, but I didn't shiver. There was no weight on my shoulders anymore. Just clean, open air. That night, I went home and did something I probably should have done years ago. I opened my contacts. I scrolled. And I deleted them. Helen. Paul. Even the old emergency contact forms with their names listed as backups, just in case. I cleared everything. Phone numbers, emails, address book entries that hadn't been updated since my father's funeral. Gone. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. I no longer owed them access, not to my daughter, not to my peace, not even to the version of me they thought they could manipulate. They had used my name like a tool. They had tested my silence like a weapon. And when I didn't react the way they expected, they tried to frame my strength as coldness. But silence is not weakness. And boundaries are not cruelty. The next morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen window like something sacred. Lily sat at the table with her sketchbook, legs swinging, head tilted as she shaded in the armor on a crayon fox. She looked up. Did you fix it? I smiled. Not everything, but enough. She nodded, satisfied. I poured her orange juice, then made myself coffee. The house felt still, not empty, just still. Not a single ring, not a knock, not a just checking in. And for once, the quiet wasn't uncomfortable. It was earned. Later that afternoon, I pulled out the small garden journal my dad used to keep. I hadn't opened it since before he passed. Inside, I found his old notes on the dogwood tree he once planted but never finished tending. So Lily and I bought a new one. We planted it together that Sunday right in the middle of the yard. Not as a tribute to what was lost, but as a symbol of what was reclaimed. Roots in the right place. Ground no one else could name but us. That evening, as we sat on the porch sipping warm mugs of tea and juice, Lily leaned her head against my shoulder. Do you think they'll ever say sorry? She asked. I paused. No, I said, and that's okay. We stayed quiet for a long time, watching the wind move the grass in slow silver waves. Then she said, almost dreamily, you didn't open the box, and that saved us. I turned to her. No, I said softly. You saved us. She smiled. And in that moment, I knew. What they tried to take from me, trust, clarity, identity, they never really owned. Because I'd already passed the one thing that matters on to her. Instinct, courage, voice. I don't owe them access. Not anymore.